So, for a while, I've been watching a lot of ASMR, and I really wanted to read a book. In the past, I've read my friends like bedtime stories, and they'll fall asleep on like Skype and stuff when Skype was still a thing. So I figured why not at least try, it's worth it. So I really wanted to read this book, Norse mythology. However, there are a lot of names of like places and items and people that because they're Norse, it has more specific like accent to it, I guess, and I'm really shy, so I don't want to try that. And then same goes for a Moomin book, which is a really good Swedish-Finnish book / TV show that I actually have tattooed on me, but that's another story. And it's all in Swedish, so maybe if I get better at it, I'll read it. And there were a few other books I wanted to read, but most of them were all picture books, so I wouldn't really be able to show you, and I feel like it would be unfair since most of it is like picture based. So I figured we would go with this book that I really used to like for some reason when I was younger. It's called M or F, and this was written 2005, so it's still pretty good, honestly. So I figured why not read a chapter or two and put this video up and see if people want me to read more or read a different book or try some actual ASMR. I'm not really great at whispering too much, and I feel like when you're reading a book, it's better if you're more soft-spoken than whispering, because it's kind of hard to understand when you're reading a book. But, I mean, whatever, anyone wants or what I feel comfortable doing, I'll just throw it up on here, but I've been talking for way too long. So, Chapter 1. I'm thinking this whole thing will make a good movie someday. It will be the first feature from Tributary Productions, which will be my company. Tributary, as in out of the mainstream, but always going somewhere. Productions, as in life is one big... Franny says I'm a drama queen. I prefer to think of myself as someone who knows a good story when he sees one. So, opening credits roll. Camera tracks down the hallway of a typical high school. Make that painfully typical. Everyone you see looks like someone else you already know. Geeks and gods and everyone in between are either hanging out or jostling along, all of them wearing clothes that look like they came from the same mall, which they probably did. The camera passes by a big banner on the wall. It used to say "Go Bucks," but now the word "yourself" is scrawled after it with the S in Bucks crossed out. A grumpy-looking, thick-necked teacher with a bad tie is taking the banner down as the camera passes him by and pushes into a crowded cafeteria. Move in on a small table at the far corner where someone is sitting with his back to the camera. He's 16, has straight dark hair that shags over his ears, and wears a bright green t-shirt with Bublio on the back in black writing. The way the camera is positioned, you think he's eating alone, but then a girl's face comes into view as she leans a little to the side to look at something over his shoulder. She's the same age, but more put together than he is, with lots of curly dark hair pulled back from her face and a wavy fade striped top that almost looks out of focus and definitely didn't come from everyone else's mall. That's me and Franny, or at least the movie versions of ourselves, who of course will be better looking. Hey, it's my movie. I can do what I want. The camera moves in closer. Franny's eyes register something across the room, and she says, And that's really how this all began. Not even a syllable. I didn't think much about it at the time, but I did look up for my bowl of Fruity Pebbles. What? I asked her. Nothing, she said, as in something, but I was going to have to ask twice to find out. What? I asked again. That girl, Astrid. Franny was still staring over my shoulder. She's just hanging all over him. Who? Astrid, that girl from Germany, the exchange student with the big lips and the stupid shoes. No, I said, knowing better than to turn around conspicuously. Who's she hanging on? But now Franny was back on her sandwich like it was the most interesting thing she'd ever eaten. She might as well have had the word oops in a little cloud-shaped bubble hanging over her head. I knew right away she had said more than she wanted to, which was strange for us. We always told each other everything, so of course I was more interested than ever. Now I gave myself permission to turn around and look. I did it subtly, without letting my eyes stop in any one place, then turned back to face Franny again. Jeffrey Osborne, I said. That's who Astrid was hanging on. Good choice. Jeffrey Osborne was all the right things and wasn't any of the wrong things either. He was hot. Blue eyes, long eyelashes, sexy little smile, nice arms, but he wasn't stuck up about it. I don't think he knew how good-looking he was, which always makes a person better looking. He was also nice, but didn't seem sugary sweet. He was a quasi-high profile at school, but he wasn't mainstream either. As far as I knew, he really didn't slot in with a particular group or clique, but he always had a swarm of people hanging around him. And hanging was exactly what Astrid was doing. She had one hand clamped on Jeffrey's shoulder like she couldn't stand on her own. They were working a table in the cafeteria, getting volunteers signed up for something to do with Green Up Day. At least, Jeffrey was working the table, Astrid was just working Jeffrey. Franny, meanwhile, was plowing through her pastrami on rye like it was Astrid's head. I can't believe this is the first I'm hearing about this, I told her. How long have you been window shopping him? I don't know, she lied. That meant a long time. I leaned in close. Do Jen and Belina know about this? Jen and Belina were Franny's girls on the side. I had best friend status, but sometimes they could get things out of her that even I couldn't. Franny shook her head. There's nothing to know. That's so not true, I said. This was about the 100th deep, dark secret Franny had ever told me, but as far as I knew, it was the first one she had ever held back before telling. That meant something. I tried wearing her down with a heavy stare for a few seconds, but then realized something else. Wait a minute. This isn't just an eye candy thing. You're big smitten, aren't you? That's why she wasn't talking. If silence speaks louder than words, right then, Franny's silence was saying crush, 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 which is different than hot for, hot for, hot for. Hot was all she'd ever been for anyone until now. I walked my fingers across the table and up her arm. So, what are we gonna do about this? When I reached her ear, she squirmed off to the side. We, she told me, are not going to do anything. Yeah, I said. That's exactly the kind of line people give right before they do the thing they just said they weren't going to do. This is real life, sweetie, she said, not a movie, remember? It's the same thing, I argued. Actually, it's not. Well, it ought to be. We both took bites of food at the same time and chewed in silence. End of round 1. I started round 2 almost right away. Just go see what the Green Up Day thing is about, I told her. You don't even have to do anything. Just get on his radar. And say what? I patted Franny's hand. You're so cute when you're stalling. Let's see. How about... Hi, what's this Green Up Day thing all about? It's bad timing, she said. Astrid's right there. She's practically stapled to him. That means it's perfect timing, I told her. Time to send in the staple remover. Ooh, office supplies. Very sexy, she said. Ooh, changing the subject. Nice try. Franny rolled her eyes. Translation, she knew I was right but didn't have a comeback. Seriously, I went on, you're thinking about it too much. If you want, you can pretend in your mind that you're not interested in him, but then don't act like you're not interested in him when you're over there. It'll help you balance out. Okay, 1, she started counting out her responses on her fingers. I'm not even sure what you just said. 2, saying that something is easy doesn't make it easy. And 3, remember the guy at the Thai place? I didn't see you going for it and getting all bold. Let's see, what happened? Marcus got lost in his Pad Ki Mao and never said a word. That was some stranger in a restaurant, I said. This is someone we know at school. Barely. No, she interrupted. Whatever, it's totally different. The other difference was that this was her we were talking about, not me. It's always easier to know what someone else should do. Not to mention the fact that Franny's odds were so much better than mine. Roaring Brook High School wasn't exactly crawling without... Roaring Brook High School wasn't exactly crawling without and eligible gay boys. Sorry. I couldn't even find someone to have a realistic crush on, much less think about finding a boyfriend. This Jeffrey thing, on the other hand, had some potential. Just go, I told her, but I could see she wasn't ready. She looked over in Jeffrey's direction again with this expression on her face, like a kid in a toy store with no money. Maybe later, she tried. Maybe later he'll be with Astrid, I said, and then right away, I'm just kidding, because she was a little fragile right now, although we both knew I wasn't completely kidding. I snuck another look, taking Jeffrey in with fresh eyes. I'd noticed him before, just because he was nice to look at, but I'd never really considered him. He is cute, I said to Franny. Not necessarily my type, but I can see where you're coming from. And he definitely makes more sense than Ronald McDonald. That was my nickname for Franny's last and strangest crush ever. Ron McCosser. The guy played everything ball, had one gigantic eyebrow, and was only an animal pelt away from looking like a natural history museum display. Early Cro-Magnon jock. Franny had started the school year with this thing for him that I had never been able to understand, and in fact, she had gone out with him exactly once. They'd gone to Taco Bell, strike 1, on their way to seeing some Vin Diesel movie, strike 2, where Ron had skipped the popcorn and gone straight for Rainey's crotch. The end. I'm going to buy Ron McCosser off of you, she said. How much to never mention him again? I'd say one conversation with Jeffrey Osborne would about cover it. She rolled her eyes again, in that if I didn't love you, I'd hate you kind of way. At the end of the eye roll, though, she was looking over my shoulder in Astrid and Jeffrey's direction. Just one vowel away from him. 6th period, after lunch, Franny had Latin and I had geometry. Standing at our lockers just before the bell, I gave her an assignment. Okay, I said. Remember how you made that list? What, the pros and cons of getting gold highlights? She said, reading my mind. Not exactly the same thing. Except, I stressed, then it helped you decide to go for it. Franny pulled her Latin book out of her locker and slammed the door. Okay, even for you, that's stretching it a little thin, don't you think? I wasn't going to argue. This time, just make it 5 good things about Jeffrey. It'll give you a reason to take the next step, and if you can't come up with 5 things by 7th period, then that should tell you something too. I barely even know him, she said again. It's just a feeling, not an itemized list. Okay, fine, I told her. Just don't come whining to me when you're 80 and don't have anyone to squeeze your boobs. Ew? That's not an answer. Okay, I'll do it. Do what? Jen asked, just arriving at Franny's locker with Belina. The two of them always picked her up on the way to 6th period. I had to stifle myself. This was Franny's thing to tell. Jen and Belina both stared at her, and when she didn't say anything, they turned to look at me. I just raised my eyebrows and kept my mouth shut. Don't make us ask twice, 'cause you know you're going to tell. God, why am I stuttering? Belina said. She always cuts through the crap to the truth of anything. Of course, she's also the only one of us with a boyfriend, so she can afford to be a little cocky. Franny shook her head. I'll tell you on the way to class. What did you get her into this time? Jen asked me, but they were already walking away. You're going to like this one, I told them. Jen glanced back with this very puzzled look on her face. Then again, that's her normal expression. She's much smarter than she looks. She's got that typical blonde Barbie kind of thing going on, but smart isn't the same as quick. I went in the opposite direction, toward geometry, my first period of the day without Franny. Ethan Schmalcher fell in step with me out of nowhere. Hey, he said, what's going on? Hey, Ethan. Listen, the GSA is doing a tarot card reading booth for the carnival. Interested? No thanks, I said. Ethan was the president of Roaring Brook High School's Gay Straight Alliance and was always trying to get me involved. He was a perfectly nice person, but seemed to think that being gay meant we were supposed to have all kinds of things to talk about, which we never did. You should come to another meeting, he told me for the millionth time. Maybe I will, I answered for the millionth time. I couldn't blame him for his persistence. At the one meeting I'd ever gone to, At the one meeting I'd ever gone to, it had been about 90% well-meaning straight kids and Ethan. He was slowly working up the queer membership, but I just wasn't interested. It wasn't like I had some jam-packed social calendar, but somehow Franny and I managed to fill a large percentage of our time with each other, and the idea of using the GSA as a dating service was A, kind of gross and unethical, and B, not going to happen anyway, given the current membership. A little less than an hour later, I was sitting next to Franny again. She slid me a folded piece of paper just after Mr. Hartley turned his back to the class and started writing on the board. Something about the stock market crash of 29. I unfolded Franny's list and started reading. 1. We would look good together. Beautiful babies, too. No, I'm not actually thinking about that seriously, so shut up, but we would look nice together. 2. He does all kinds of good causes. Green Up Day, etc., etc. 3. He's a junior, so he's not graduating this year and going away somewhere. 4. He's a vegetarian. I looked over at Franny and pointed at number 4 with my pencil. She shoved the paper back into my hand so Melissa Carpenter, who was trying to see without looking like she was trying to see, wouldn't see. Then Franny grabbed my notebook and scribbled something on the page. Mr. Hartley rounded the corner into the Great Depression and kept going. Franny slid my notebook back. I support vegetarianism even if I don't practice. It didn't completely make sense, but enough that I had let it to pass. 5. You and I said we were going to go for it if anything came up. That item wasn't actually a good thing about Jeffrey, but it was a perfect opportunity for me to write back. So why aren't you going for it? What's keeping you? She blocked out the question before Melissa could get a look at it and then didn't write anything in reply. I couldn't blame her for not having an answer. The fact that she didn't was kind of the point. The point being, well, we all need a little help sometimes, and maybe that was why Franny and I had come into each other's lives in the first place. Cue the flashback. The screen goes wavy and blurs out, and comes back into focus on swirling fall leaves, with an exterior shot of Roaring Brook High School. It was a year and a half earlier. I was one of those kids no one ever wants to be, the ones who get moved across the country just days before starting high school. In my case, it was from Athens, Georgia, to Roaring Brook, Illinois. Illinois? Yeah, Illinois. And it felt something like this. Welcome to your new life, Marcus. This is a school full of people who all know each other. You don't know any of them. They already have enough friends. Thank you very much. Oh, and you're queer? Ready? Go. Forget the school. I didn't know a single person in the whole state except my grandmother and father, who moved here with me. Not to mention that I was barely just starting to figure out who I was. I had basically come out to myself that summer, so it was a less than optimal time to not have anyone to talk to, but there it was, and there I was, and then there she was. Franny rescued me on the second day of school. She just struck up a conversation in the cafeteria line. I think it was the first time anyone at that school said something to me that wasn't a question, as in, "Where are you from? Do you have the answer to the equation? You want fries, honey?" "Don't take the fries." She whispered it at my shoulder, like some kind of spy. I guess she was trying to be polite to the cafeteria lady, who at least called me honey. I looked at the floor, playing it cool because she was whispering to me, but also kind of excited because someone was talking to me. I saw a pair of vintage buffalo sandals and these two petticoats she was wearing as a skirt, and I thought, cool. "Do you have any little boxes of cereal instead?" I asked the cafeteria lady. When I turned away with my Frosted Flakes in hand, Franny was standing there waiting for me. I liked her style right away. She wasn't anyone's clone, but she wasn't trying too hard either. This girl had taste. It wasn't like anyone else's taste, but it worked. And she had this very friendly face, too. The kind that can stare at you without making you mad or uncomfortable. "I don't really like fries anyway," I said to her, "but thanks for the heads up." "Franny Falconer," she said it just like that, which could have been weird, but wasn't. I responded in kind. "Marcus Beauregard." "Beauregard?" Unlike most people, she got her mistake right away. "Oh, right. Sorry." Usually everyone repeats my name like I picked it out myself or something. There's no good answer you can give to the question, "Beauregard?" I didn't have to say anything. She just got it. It was the first conversation we ever had without actually having it. The first of many yet to come. Maybe it was fate. Or maybe our mothers got radiated by the same alien experiment when they were pregnant with us. Or it was a long-lost twin switched at birth kind of thing. Whatever it was, we snicked together like two refrigerator magnets that day, and no one's looked back since. Flash forward, and Franny's dropping me off at home a year and a half later. "Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to him," I told her as I got out of the car. I still hadn't managed to get anywhere with her on the Jeffrey thing. "Whatever, I'll pick you up after dinner." We were going to study for a quiz later at her house, which was way more comfortable than mine, and always had better snacks. "I'm serious," I yelled. She pretended not to hear and drove away. Inside my own house, I could hear my grandmother singing in the shower, something about yellow roses. I snarfed some peanuts from the freezer where my father kept them, and went back to my room. A few minutes later, she knocked, always 3. "Marcus, you home?" "Come on in, Patricia." I've never called her grandma in my life. Patricia Beauregard, my father's mother, is what some people might call young at heart and what other people might call crazy. Anyone who's ever seen or read The Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood will have some idea of the kind of person she is. A blender full of proper southern debutante, modern older woman, and ex-hippie. She leaned into my room far enough to show the towel turban on her head and one bra-strapped shoulder. "Hey, sugar, how you doing?" "Fine," I said, trying not to look. I love the woman, but I love her more when she's dressed. "I'm leaving soon. You and your dad can order a pizza. I already made a salad and some iced tea. That gonna be okay for you?" "Sure, thanks." Patricia eyeballed me, squinting without her glasses. "Got plans tonight?" "Just studying at Franny's." She made this mouth-clicking sound of hers. "You two are so cute together. You ought to have her here. You ought to have her over here more often. She's welcome anytime." "I know. Thanks." Tidy doesn't exactly run in our family, and the furniture is about as old as I am. Patricia paid for half of everything, so I didn't want to tell her how uncomfortable our house was if you weren't used to living in it. I let it slide, along with everything else, like the fact that she thought Franny was my girlfriend. In the year and a half since we'd moved here, and more specifically since I'd started thinking of myself as gay, I had shared that piece of information with my father, with Franny, and with anyone else at school who cared to know. The one person I hadn't come out to was Patricia. Coming out to Dad had been amazingly stress-free. He was fine about it. bland is probably a better word. I really don't think it bothered him that much, although he can be hard to read. Either way, telling him wasn't a big deal. For some reason, though, Patricia felt like another matter. I just couldn't bring myself to change her idea of who I was. She'd caught me lying once about some candy I'd stolen from the grocery store, and I always remember how disappointed she seemed me and how terrible that disappointment made me feel. This was a completely different kind of lie, but the risk felt that much bigger. Now, even though I'd never said so, Franny was my girlfriend where Patricia was concerned, and I was trapped in this stupid game of charades I couldn't stop playing. My voice got really monotone, I'm sorry. Dad and I talked about it later after he came home. If you want me to tell her for you, he said, I will, but no. I said, never mind. Thanks. The only thing that ever changed in this conversation was the amount of time it took me to come back to the same conclusion. I wanted to tell Patricia myself someday, maybe on her deathbed, if I could put it off that long. What is a quark? Dad said to the TV. We were parked in front of Jeopardy, the closest thing he and I had to father-son bonding. I watched it with him all the time and usually held my own too. Dad's some kind of trivia genius, but I can get him on pop culture and geography. He's got science and history buckled down. Everything else is up for grabs. Why am I stuttering so much? I apologize. His job is something with computers and engineering and plastic packaging. One of these days, I'm going to have to find out what it is exactly. Other than Jeopardy, he and I don't have a whole lot in common. The same is true between him and my grandmother. If Patricia is mocha almond fudge swirl on a sugar cone, then Dad, whose name is Patrick after her, is a dish of vanilla. I'm somewhere in between. It's hard to say which side of the fence all my chromosomes fall to. I never knew my mom. She took off before I can remember, which of course opens the door to all kind of homophobic pop psychology about absent mothers and gay sons. I can't speak for anyone else, but for myself, slap a born gay sticker on my chest and move on. End of discussion. What is Papua New Guinea? Dad said. I shoved him with my shoulder. I knew that one. You're too slow on the buzzer, he said. He's more competitive than most people would guess. The phone rang a single time. That was Franny's signal that she was about a block away. I stood up and grabbed my backpack, then heard her honk out front. See you, Dad. Gotta go. Who is Thurgood Marshall? Say hi to Franny for me and be home by 11, please. No prob, I said. Then I headed out to the front door to go spend the rest of the evening with a normal family. So that was the end of chapter 1. I am so sorry for my stuttering and mix-ups. That kind of happens a lot because I don't know if you can tell, but I read pretty fast and I absolutely suck at slowing down. So if you at least somewhat enjoyed that, please let me know. If you want me to keep reading this story or another one, let me know. And other than that, I can't necessarily think of anything, but thank you for watching.